Hey, the next game I'm going to talk about is one of my all-time favorites, Gottlieb Reactor. I played this first time in Circus in the mid-80s, early 80s. Very rare game. Only saw a few of them out in the wild. I did end up owning one of the full-size arcade machines. Loved it. Unfortunately, in the process of clearing out and whatnot, I did have to liquidate that. I always wanted to have it back in my collection. I thought, well, New Wave Toys is probably not going to make one. Why not give myself a chance and see if I could pull one off? So this is my version of a mini arcade machine, Reactor. When I set out on this project, I didn't have any high expectations. Building a mini arcade machine, I've got limited skills in that regard. I can get around a shop, do a little bit of soldering. But at the end of the day, if I had something that looked and somewhat appeared like a reactor, I was going to be happy with it. I wasn't really fixated on whether or not it was going to be playable or not. If it had a static image on the screen, that would be good enough for me. At the end of the day, what I ended up achieving was a fully playable reactor machine. Trackball works, buttons work, powers up, lit marquee, dual speaker. I'm super happy with the way that it turned out. Talking a little bit about what I had to end up doing in order to create this. I don't have the means to actually create a cabinet from scratch, so my process has been to find some type of donor cabinet and do what I can to modify that. Interestingly enough, Atari's Missile Command is pretty close to Gottlieb's Reactor in terms of cabinet design. I took a New Wave Toys Missile Command, sacrificed that, and basically stripped it in order to come up with a bare cabinet that I could use for my Reactor game. Fortunately, there wasn't a whole lot that I had to do in terms of modifying the existing cabinet. This piece right here, do a little bit of fabrication right here to get this spot, because this control panel, the top of this front only goes up to right here, so I needed to extend that up so that the control panel on the reactor would fit there. That is about the most of the fabrication that I had to do, with some of the other parts I'll get to in a minute. So strip the cabinet down, remove the side art, remove the internals. I was not able to reuse the monitor, the control panel, or the CPU itself, since they're proprietary, or at least appear to be proprietary to New Wave Toys. I was actually able to scavenge the trackball from the Missile Command. Interestingly enough, this is a USB controller, USB trackball, so getting it to work with a RetroPie, Raspberry Pi system was fairly straightforward, not too difficult. I was able to also use the monitor bezel itself, but not the monitor glass, and I did have to fabricate the marquee on the reactor. So taking a little closer look at that, this portion has been fabricated here. I put some self-adhesive vinyl over the top of it. So the other part of this that I did have to scavenge from was a GRS Build-a-Cade cabinet. The buttons themselves, but not the actual the switches, come from GRS. The wiring harness is from GRS. The power board, audio board is also from the GRS Build-a-Cade. But I did strip it down and create my own faceplate there, and embed that into the back of the cabinet itself. Filled in a couple of the existing holes. So on the Missile Command, this is where the power and volume are. I just replaced it with a piece of plastic there. I have a small laser engraver, so that's the way I was getting some of this etched in there. Engrave this wording right there. But otherwise, it's fully functional. Charge cable on-off, power light, USB external if needed, volume control. The control panel itself is completely fabricated, a piece of ABS plastic drilled out. I'll show some pictures in a minute of the control panel itself, basically using some breadboard, micro switches, hot melt, and a lot of wiring to get that to hook up. The LCD module is a Raspberry Pi compatible component. I was not able to use the LCD from the missile command. The marquee is a separate piece of plastic, translucent plastic, using the lighting from probably the GRS cabinet, and creating and applying a marquee overlay. Got speakers in there. 2 dual speakers. Even though the game is monaural, the original cabinet did have dual speakers, and I wanted to replicate that as well. The artwork. I found I found reproductions of artwork, scaled them down. That took a little bit of time to figure out what does work, does not work, and get it so that it would fit. Slightly different layout of the missile command cabinet compared to the Gottlieb, but without too much work I was able to get it to fit on there. I did a little bit of editing of the control panel itself. The original has 1-player, 2-player, and energy and decoy on both sides. I wanted to get this to be a little bit more readable, so energy and decoy over here, 1- and 2-player over there. And the printing, I actually did this at the local FedEx office. This is printing there and then laminated. This is a different laminate, so it gives more of the control panel feel. Same thing with the marquee. And then just manual cutting. As mentioned, the roller ball is a USB component, so I was able to just extract that from the missile command, and you pretty much use that as is. Just glue it on into the bottom of the control panel, and then plug that into the USB port on the Raspberry Pi. We'll go ahead and power it up. There it is. And it is fully playable. A little bit of tweaking of the RetroPie to get the trackball just to the same level of feel that the full size has, but it is pretty dang close. That's it. My attempt at a Reactor mini arcade machine. At the end of the day, I probably have 80 to 100 hours invested in the fabrication, trial and error on this machine. Maybe about $600 worth of components, parts. Printing the side art was about $100 in and of itself. I printed multiple sizes and multiple copies, so you could get away with just doing, if you had it specifically cut out, or specifically sized for the machine. You could get away with, you know, a lot smaller. But you know, a GRS Build-a-Cade cabinet, a missile command, side art, the Raspberry Pi CPU. That's most of the components. With the success of that, I did try again to build another one. I wanted to take what I had learned from this and see if I could enhance it a little bit to get it a little bit closer representation of a full-size arcade machine. The time that I had built this till this, GRS had come out with, I think it's a 7-button control panel, and the buttons on that are a little bit better representation of actual arcade machine buttons. It's got a small, outer side of it, as well as the button itself. So I think that's a little better representation as to compared to what they have just basically on their standard button. That was a change that I did there. I did actually reuse the monitor magnifier, or the CRT display that comes on the missile commands, to give it a little bit more of that CRT look and feel. I added this pseudo ventilation strip on the back. It's a little more consistent with the Gottlieb cabinets of that era. And I have a vertical coin door, which is consistent with the arcade cabinet as well. Cabinet number 1 just reused the coin door from Missile Command. This cabinet actually reuses or uses a coin door from Ghosts and Goblins. I'll explain why that came to be when I get into talking about Defender. But other than that, it's pretty much the same as version 1.